Hi everyone, it's Katie from Paradise Falls family. In this video we'll be taking you through our trip to Hawaii and California in August 2023. This was one of our best holidays ever and one we put a lot of thought into and spent a ton of time planning. In this vlog series we'll talk through a different aspect of the trip in each video, but here I'll give you an overview of our holiday to set the scene and explain what went into the planning of our itinerary before travelling. We were away for almost 3 weeks, spending 2 nights in San Diego, 7 nights on Oahu at Disney's Aulani resort, 7 nights on a cruise around the Hawaiian Islands, 1 night in Honolulu, and then 2 nights in San Jose. This was our first visit to Hawaii, and we approached it from the point of view that this might be the only time we visit Hawaii, so wanted to try and see as much of the islands as we possibly could and maximise our time there. Going into our trip in more detail, we started off our journey in London at the Marriott Heathrow Windsor Hotel, where we'd stayed overnight. If you've watched our vlogs before, you'll know that this is one of our preferred Heathrow hotels, as it offers a really great deal on parking for the duration of your holiday. We paid £286 for the night at the hotel as a family of 4, and then 3 weeks worth of parking. And it's only around a 10-minute taxi journey away from the terminals, which you can easily book in the hotel the night before for around £45. The hotel also helpfully has a self-service kiosk to pre-book the taxis, which makes it so easy. Our first stop was San Diego, an area of California that Greg and I have visited before, but where we'd not taken the kids and where we didn't quite get to the previous summer on our California road trip. We enjoyed a really smooth flight out to California from Heathrow with British Airways and checked in for our first 2 nights at the Wyndham San Diego Bayside. We picked this hotel for its location, right by the bay and really handy for the sightseeing that we had planned. While the location was great, we really weren't impressed with this hotel, with the room being really unclean, among other issues, and we wouldn't stay here again. I'll go into more detail in next week's vlog on our time in San Diego, but despite the hotel, we did have a brilliant time in the city, spending the morning out at Coronado Beach before finishing over at Belmont Park a little up the coast. Our original plans had us returning to San Diego after our time in Hawaii, but Hurricane Hilary put a stop to that, hence why we ended up going to San Jose instead. Our intention on the return was to visit the famed San Diego Zoo and the Gaslamp District, but we'll have to save those for a future trip. After a really fun start to the holiday, we then flew on to Honolulu with Alaska Airlines, and this was an absolute breeze. We were a little unsure how we'd find doing 4 flights this trip, but it was so easy with it being an internal flight, albeit a fairly long one at around 5.5 hours. Alaska were brilliant, loads of legroom and in-flight entertainment which you can access on your own personal devices via their free Wi-Fi. And we were off and in our resort less than an hour after touching down. Our taxi was pre-booked online through Aulani's recommended provider Charlie's Taxis, and they had a reduced flat rate which including tip came to just under $100. We'd booked 7 nights at Disney's Aulani resort using our DVC points to allow us a long enough stay there to spend some time relaxing while also enjoying everything Oahu has to offer. This was probably our favourite part of the trip. The resort was absolutely amazing and a lovely place to relax, and Oahu was so much fun. We rented a car through Enterprise, which was actually based inside of the hotel, for 3.5 days and explored all over the island, packing in loads of fun stuff which I'll talk about later in the series. Next up was our cruise with Norwegian Cruise Line, or NCL as it gets abbreviated to, on the Pride of America ship. This cruise leaves every Saturday from Honolulu and spends 2 days in Maui, 2 in the Big Island, split between Kona and Hilo, and 2 days in Kauai. It has overnight stops in Maui and Kauai, meaning it's effectively a floating hotel to maximise the time in port and to see the most of the islands. Unfortunately, while we were in Oahu, Maui was hit by terrible wildfires which had a horrific impact, and so our thoughts go out to everyone in Maui affected by these. Given this situation, our cruise was adjusted, so we didn't get to go to Maui this time. Instead, the itinerary was updated to spend 2 days in Hilo on Big Island, a day in Kona, a day at sea sailing the Napoli coast on Kauai, followed by 2 days in Kauai. Again, I'll talk about the cruise and our time on the islands in separate vlogs, but we had a wonderful time seeing this beautiful part of the world. We got off the cruise on a Saturday, and because of the specific flights we wanted, we'd booked a night in Honolulu at the Equus Hotel at Waikiki. Our plan was just to spend some time in the city and on Waikiki Beach after a busy week exploring the islands. However, we had our second natural disaster of the holiday to deal with Hurricane Hilary hitting the west coast of America that same weekend. As a result, our flight with Hawaiian Islands to San Diego on the Sunday was cancelled, and we had to spend most of Saturday afternoon back at our hotel trying to rearrange our flights, hotels and our plans to get back home. Hawaiian Airlines weren't great in this whole process, and neither were British Airways really. Neither were able to find us alternative flights or routes, and while Hawaiian did give us a full refund, it left us in the lurch and we were left on our own to try and find a way home. Fortunately, we were able to find what must have been the last 4 seats on a flight with Alaska Airlines to San Jose the next day for not much more than what we paid for our San Diego flights. We then had to find a way to get down to San Diego for our flight home to London, and at one point we were spending our last full day of the trip driving 7 hours from San Jose to San Diego to try and make the flight. However, we decided it really wasn't safe with the storm hitting Southern California, and fortunately we were able to find an alternative flight from San Jose to London Heathrow on the same date with availability. We'd booked the flight with British Airways using our air miles, which did complicate things, as the flight hadn't actually been cancelled, and so we'd had to find a flight with air mile seats available, and we were really lucky here. But we were able to move the flights, paying a service fee and some extra taxes. So after a somewhat hectic last day in Honolulu, we flew over to San Jose for our last 2 nights. Again, Alaska Airlines were brilliant, and we definitely look to fly with them again in the future where possible. For our time in San Jose, we'd found a cheap hotel by the airport for convenience, the Homewood Suites by Hilton, San Jose Airport, and this was actually a really lovely hotel. Then we booked a car through Thrifty, which was one of the few car rental companies with availability at such short notice, and we spent the last day or 2 exploring San Francisco, Oakland and Silicon Valley. We'd visited San Francisco and the Bay Area the previous summer, so we had some ideas of how to spend our time there, and so although it was all very last minute, we had a lovely end to our trip. Our journey back to London was really smooth, dropping the car off at San Jose Airport and flying back to Heathrow. It was then another short taxi ride back to the Marriott Hotel where we'd parked our car, and we were able to get on the road home quickly and easily with an overnight stop halfway in a Premier Inn just to break the journey up as the flight landed quite late in the day. So that was a whistle-stop overview of our holiday to give you an idea of what we fit in. It was probably the most ambitious trip we've done with the kids, but it was absolutely wonderful, and both kids said it was 10 out of 10 and one of the best holidays they've done. We thought going into this that this might be the only time we'd visit Hawaii, but we're all desperate to go back one day as it really is a dream holiday destination. As I said, we'll go through what we did, the hotels, the cruise, etc. in more detail throughout this vlog series, but now I'll take you through some of the work that went into our planning and how we put the trip together. Our first decision when approaching this was which of the islands to visit. There are actually 8 major islands in the chain, but only 4 of these are typically visited by tourists. Each offers something different, and we didn't know when or if we'd be back with it being so far from the UK, so we wanted to try and visit all 4 if we could. With this in mind, rather than flying from island to island and with all the time that takes and the hassle and the effort, we decided to look for a cruise, which we thought would be a more relaxing way to dot from island to island. The only cruise which operates year-round on a regular basis is the Pride of America cruise operated by Norwegian Cruise Line, and so this is what we went for, and we built the rest of the itinerary around this. The cruise cost £4,200 for the four of us for an inside stateroom, which we didn't feel was too bad for a week, and it was cheaper than booking flights and hotels on each of the islands individually. We then knew we wanted to spend some time on Oahu, which is where the cruise departed from, and is probably the most visited of all the Hawaiian Islands. And in particular, we wanted to stay at the Disney resort Aulani, where we could use our DVC points. So we added a week here, making sure to book our stay at the 9-month mark as soon as our DVC booking window opened, as it's a really popular resort. We chose to do this stay before the cruise, as we like to avoid flying in the day before a cruise just in case of delays or cancellations. So with our 2 weeks in Hawaii sorted, then we just needed to sort out our stopovers on the mainland. It isn't possible to fly direct from the UK to Hawaii, and we also wanted a couple of nights either side to give us all a chance to adjust a little to the time difference each way. This was the furthest away from home we'd taken the kids, so we didn't know how we'd all deal with the jet lag. We weighed up a number of different options, but we were able to book return flights from the UK to San Diego using our British Airways Air Miles and companion vouchers for just the cost of the taxes and fees, which came to around £1,000. San Diego was one of the main places we weren't able to visit in California the previous summer, and there are regular flights to and from Honolulu, so it worked out really well. Quite a few of these are overnight though, particularly coming back, which we didn't want, so this reduced our choice a little. Therefore, we decided to add another night in Honolulu after the cruise in order to fly back to San Diego during the daytime flight we wanted. Our return flights from San Diego to Hawaii came to around £2,000 in total for the four of us. As it was only a one-night stay in Honolulu, we decided to keep it fairly cheap, and we were able to get a night at the Equus near Waikiki Beach, a 4-star boutique hotel for around £200, which was lovely. Then we just needed to book 2 nights in San Diego, both at the start and the end of the trip, and we went for the Wyndham Bayside San Diego on the way out for around £400 in total, and the Best Western Plus Bayside Inn on the way back for around £300. There were nicer hotels which we did fancy, particularly around the Gaslamp Quarter and the Hotel del Coronado, which is a bucket list hotel for us, but we knew we had to keep the budget down where we could. The hotels we picked were fairly centrally located, they seemed to have decent reviews and had parking available if we decided to rent a car. We booked all 3 of these hotels through Expedia as usual. We like the flexible rates on offer if our plans change. We can get cash back on our bookings, which helps with the cost a little. I've included links to all 3 hotels below for reference. With the flights, cruise and hotels sorted, we then moved on to firming up our plans for each of the places. Once we had a rough idea of what we wanted to see and do, our next step was to get a car booked, which is particularly important for Hawaii, where some of the availability can be limited and prices can vary quite a lot. We always book through Alamo, as they have really clear packages on their website, they have a good range of cars and prices, and they don't try and upsell on insurance or unnecessary extras. We've used them so many times over the years and we've never had any problems at all. They also offer free cancellation and pay on arrival, which really helps as prices do vary, and we found that if prices go down you can cancel and rebook, which did save us a few £100 here when the prices dropped a few months out. Starting with San Diego, we really deliberated about what to do here. We decided we wanted to spend one visit out at Coronado, followed by Belmont Park, and then the second at the zoo, followed by the Gaslamp District. In both cases, we'd have needed at least an SUV to carry all our luggage to and from the airport, so it would have cost us around £300 each time. We worked out it would be much cheaper just to use Ubers instead for the few journeys that we needed to make, and so we decided against renting a car in San Diego. Ultimately, this changed, and when we ended up in San Jose, we did need to rent a car, but this was a last-minute change out of necessity. In terms of cars, when we were in Hawaii, we knew we wanted a car in Oahu to explore the island, but we didn't want to be busy the whole time and wanted to roughly split our time with 3 days exploring and 3 days in the resort relaxing. To get a car for the week from the airport would have meant an SUV again and the additional cost for the days we didn't even want to use it. Fortunately, Aulani has an enterprise desk at the resort, so instead we just booked a compact car for just over 3 days for around £270, which was really reasonable and made things really easy. For the different ports on the cruise, we booked rental cars for 3 of the 4 stops. We did look at excursions, but these were very expensive, and we were in port for such a long time, it made more sense to us to have a car so we could explore at our leisure. The only excursion we did book was for Kona, which is a tender port, so the ship can sometimes miss this stop if seas are too rough, so we thought it made sense to arrange our plans with an NCL excursion here, as we'd get our money back if the ship couldn't dock. We went for the historic Kona cruise for around £550, and I'll talk more about this later in the series. For the other 3 ports, we booked cars through Alamo with pickups from the airport, which was always around a 10-minute taxi ride away. These all came to around £130 per day for a compact car and a tank of fuel. One option a lot of people recommended was two-row, which is basically where you rent a car from a local, and can be more convenient and cheaper in terms of dropping the car off at the port, etc. However, we'd heard of a few difficulties with this, so being short on time, we wanted to go with something tried and trusted, and we stuck with Alamo, which worked out really well for us. In addition, we always separately take out an additional car hire excess insurance policy just in case, so we made sure that this was sorted before we travelled. With everything then in place, we moved on to planning our time day by day in more detail, reading through our guidebooks, watching vlogs to find out the best things to do. We made sure to pre-book any specific activities we wanted to do, and we found more than any other holiday we've done, there are just so many of these things in Hawaii, as there's just so much to do. Starting with Aulani, there are a range of things you can book at 90 days out, 60 days out and 30 days out, including kids club reservations, meals and activities such as stargazing, and I'll talk about these later on in the series. You've then got the national and state parks, many of which require reservations. For example, at Pearl Harbor, the USS Arizona Monument can be booked 8 weeks out, whereas the Diamond Head State Monument, Iao Valley State Monument, Waianape Napa State Park and the Hyannis State Park can be booked 30 days out, and many of these book up really fast. Then you've got all the other activities you might want to book, again some of which can book up quickly. For us this included ziplining, the movie tour at Kualoa Ranch, the Polynesian Cultural Centre, horse riding, the Atlantis submarine and the luau. This was something we didn't quite appreciate when we initially booked the trip, just how much there was to do, and all of these activities really added to the cost, so it's really important to take this into account before you go. With all of this arranged, we ended up with quite a detailed itinerary to make sure we knew what we were doing each day, and so we could cover everything we wanted, while still trying to build in some time to relax. It was a lot of work planning everything, but it was so much fun and we'd definitely do it all again, and we're hoping that we can do just that in the next few years. So that was just a brief overview of the planning of our trip to Hawaii and California. We'll go into much more detail on all aspects of the trip and include more information over the course of this vlog series, so make sure to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss any of it. In the meantime, if you've got any questions or any other tips, then please let us know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching.